Hi everyone. The purpose of this video is to further explain the grant that I am providing to you in this week's discussion board as an example. So I am going to show you all of the documents that were submitted for this grant, and we'll go through them one at a time here. So the first thing that you're going to see is the actual copy of the grant I submitted. The grant was submitted in a portal for the VA, which is Veterans Administration, VA. The VA has its own grant portal that all questions, documents, signed forms after you receive the grant, they're all submitted through the portal. So the first thing you're seeing is what I copy and pasted from the portal into a Word doc for the purposes of sharing with you in this class. The grant that is being discussed this week is called the Staff Sergeant Parker Gordon Fox Suicide Prevention Grant Program. Internally, we are calling it SSG, and this is basically a brand new national grant available to nonprofit organizations serving veteran clients. It's in its second year of operation. The grant exists at 80 organizations throughout the country, and my organization was one of only 3 new organizations to receive it in this year. So what we are in receipt of is a $365,000 federal grant that we have for at least 2 years, and hopefully we will renew for many years to come. With each renewal comes a full grant application. So everything that you see here will have to be redone and submitted again in 2 years. And hopefully after that point, it'll just be every 3 years instead of every 2. So this Word document here, this 26-page document, first and foremost has an application checklist. The only sections that I filled out on this checklist are the dollar amount and the number of veterans served. The rest is just outlining sections A through G that are required for this grant. And then the remaining 25 pages are the narrative responses that I wrote for every single question and sub-question in the grant. So I don't expect you to go through this with a fine-tooth comb, but I did want to provide it so you could see an example of what a long-form, large-scale narrative grant application looks like, and also the amount of repetition and wordsmithing that is needed within it. So take a look at this if you are in particular struggling on how to write grants differently from how to write papers from school, how to write emails, things like that. So that's the first document that you've got in the discussion board. The second document that you've got in the discussion board is actually a redacted version of the budget template for this grant, which I thought was particularly important given that you are doing your own budgets this week. Like I said, it is a redacted version of it. I took out job titles and overall salaries, although you could probably do the math to figure those out. But I wanted you to see what a provided budget spreadsheet looks like. The first tab of the budget spreadsheet gives instructions on what is allowed in each section of the budget and how they expect it to appear. The second tab is the actual budget. So everything that is yellow, I filled in, and everything that is white is automatically calculated by the grant based on the numbers that I fill in. So you can see name of my organization, total amount of funds I asked for, which is $365,193. The total number of veterans that I believe we serve, that I believe we can serve through this grant. And then the spreadsheet did the math to say, this is about how much money is going into each veteran. So total amount of the grant based on how many veterans I think will serve tells them the cost to support each veteran. And then we get down into the actual budget itself. So first and foremost, because this is a large scale grant, hundreds of thousands of dollars, it does cover personnel expenses. I have 6 staff members that I am paying partially through this grant. So in that first column where it says staff member 1 through 6, that is in what I submitted their actual job titles, right? So that designation would be replaced by case manager, van driver, clinical director, whatever the title is. Then it'll ask how many of them there are. How many full-time employees with that job title am I proposing the grant support? And so you can see for just about everybody, it's one full-time position. But for staff member 4, it is a part-time job. So 20 hours a week, 0.5% of a full, or 0.5 of a full-time employee. Next is percent of full-time employee. This is what percentage of the grant will pay for that employee's salary. And you can see that I have no employees on this grant that are 100% paid by the grant. And there are 2 reasons for that. The first is that I need them to do activities outside of what the grant permits. And so if they are paid 100% by the grant, they wouldn't be able to do those activities. And 2, in case this grant ever goes away, I will at least have a portion of their salary paid for in another funding source, so it's not a complete scramble to keep them if this grant disappears. This column was filled out. I deleted it when I uploaded it to our page, and this is the total salary that the employee makes. So you've got total salary, what percentage of a full-time employee they are in accordance with the grant, and how many actual human beings are supported. The next 4 yellow columns break down what their budget looks like quarterly. And then the grant spreadsheet here calculates how much of the grant will pay for them. So, for example, staff member 1 is a full-time employee that will be paid 50% by the grant. So 50% of their annual salary is $29,000. $29,000 makes up 8% of the total grant award, which is $365,000. Let me do that one more time with a different staff member. Staff member 3 is a full-time employee at the organization who will receive 75% of their salary from this grant. 75% of their total salary is $51,428. And that 51,000 some odd dollars makes up 14% of the total grant award. So as I said, I fill out all the yellow areas, and then the grant does the math to figure out how much in dollars the grant will pay for and what percentage of the grant those dollars make up. Now, when we're talking about human beings, there is more than just a salary to consider. There is also benefits and insurance and taxes on their pay. And so you are permitted to take a certain percentage of payroll taxes, benefits, and supports and put them towards the grant as well. So you'll see in my budget narrative or budget justification on the next tab what those exact percentages were that got me to this $42,916 amount. But the grant calculated that $42,916 is 26% of their total salary, which means to support humans on this grant costs 57% of the grant award, or $207,036. Okay, so of the 365 that we're getting, 207 is specific to employment. The next category of the grant is temporary income support assistance. This grant allows us to give funds directly out to things that will support veterans accepted into the grant. Since this is a suicide prevention grant, there are funds for us to purchase gun locks, gun safes, timed medication openers to keep folks safe in their home. There's also funds for us to pay for things like mental health counseling, if they're on a wait list that's too long to receive free mental health counseling. There are funds for us to pay for childcare. So if the reason that you're not getting counseling or returning to the workforce is because there's nobody to care for your children, these funds can help support it. There's also funds in the grant to support things like job retraining, uniforms, and equipment needed. So that all falls in this $80,000 line. So out of the $365,000 in this grant, 80,000 of it goes directly to supporting veterans in their daily lives, which is just under 22% of the total grant. So that's section 2 of the budget form. Section 3 of the budget form includes expenses due to travel and training. I don't have anything here right now because at the time I wrote the grant, I was not aware of any travel or training that would be required. However, now that we've received the grant, I do know there is an in-person training for 2 staff members in Florida in December. And so I am going through what's called a budget resolution process with our grant manager to amend this budget and include the cost of travel, which means it will be pulled out from other sections of the grant. Because I can't increase my dollar amount, I can only move funds to different line items. So scrolling through that section, we get to section 4, vehicle lease cost. If we are going to be serving 166 veterans through this grant, we need the ability to get to those veterans and to provide them rides because we're in a rural area of the state with extremely limited public transportation. Every VA or veterans hospital is over an hour away. So if these veterans have medical appointments that they need to get to, we need to be able to transport them there. I included the cost of one leased vehicle, as well as an estimate on the cost of gas and general maintenance for that vehicle. Because I am running an established nonprofit, we actually already have a small fleet of vehicles here. I've got a great relationship with our local car dealer. So these numbers are low because I am very acutely aware of what we pay for our vehicles and the deal that I can get with the car dealership that we work with. So that's section 4. And then the final section of the budget is administration expenses. So we are bringing on a new staff member for this grant. And with that, we need to move offices for several other staff members to make space. So I calculated in $12,000 for office supplies for our staff. That is largely because I need to purchase 3 new desks. And office desks cost about $3,000 each. So a lot of money in there just to get an office up and running. Next thing in there is cell phone, laptop, and desktop computer for the clinical director that we are going to hire with this grant. Those are standard office supplies for every new employee that has client direct services at my organization. So we calculated that in based off of what it cost the last time we onboarded somebody and bought those things. Reintegration experiences and workshops. So the grant does allow some holistic approach to suicide prevention and mental health care. That's where these funds come in. And the reintegration experiences and workshops includes things like yoga classes, fishing trips, sporting event group trips, things like that. You'll see it in more detail on the budget narrative tab. Staff professional development and training, I calculated in $7,700 for. Every single person on my staff, from me at the top down to the custodial staff, we are all CPA, CPR, first aid, AED, bloodborne pathogen, and Narcan certified through the Red Cross. In addition to that, every single one of us is mental health first aid certified and QPR licensed, which is a quick crisis response licensure. So I want to ensure that 1, we can all maintain all of those licenses and certifications, and 2, that we have the funds to get them for anybody new that we add to the staff. Then I put in $800, which is actually a very small amount for marketing expenses. So we can do things like sponsored Facebook posts, printed flyers around towns, mailings, ads in the newspaper for this grant to advertise that we're accepting new folks into it. And then finally, indirect costs make up 5% of this grant. Indirect costs are kind of like miscellaneous money that you can use. So for example, if I'm bringing on 5 or 6 staff members to be supported by this grant, that means those staff members are occupying office space, which means they're using electricity, hot water, heat, cleaning supplies, all of those kind of things. And so indirect expenses help pay for operations within our physical building structures. And if we scroll down a little further, we can see that the total amount of grant awarded was $365,193. And if we go down further to the budget narrative section of the grant, once we enter this tab, you can see that I have written 2 to 3 sentences for every single thing that I have outlined in this grant. And so I'll be asking you to do that this week too. In addition to your budget spreadsheet, for every single line item on that budget, you should have a 2 to 3 sentence minimum explanation for why you are asking those things. So feel free to take a good look through this budget worksheet, use it as a guide for yours, knowing that this dollar amount obviously far exceeds what you will be doing for your grants. But it's just a good real world example to have. And I'm here to answer any questions if you have them. See you in the chat.